This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi, good night of Shabbos as we prepare for Parshas Shemini and Parshas Parah, and of course the Yom Tov of Pesach Habalinu L'Toiva in Sefer Tehillim in Parak Kuf Yotes Pasuk Pei. David HaMelech says as follows: Yehi libi samim b'chukecha. Let my heart be wholesome in your statutes, l'man lo yevosh, so I should not be embarrassed. David HaMelech says, let my heart be wholesome, tamim, tamimos. What are these chukim? B'chukecha, plural. Yehi, says the Medrash in Shmais Rabbah, Parsha Yotes Ois Beis. Davar acher. Yehi libi samim b'chukecha. What are the chukim? Zeh chukas ha-Pesach v'chukas Parah Adumah. The chukah of the Korban Pesach and the chukah of Parah Adumah. Why these two? Lama sheshneim doimim zeh lezeh. They're both similar to each other. B'zeh nemar zois chukas ha-Pesach u'b'zeh nemar zois chukas ha-Torah. They both say the word chukim. For example, look in number 3 in Parshas Boy. The pasuk says, Korban Pesach is called a chayk, and of course we're going to learn the Shabbos. According to some Rishonim, it might even be a mitzvah d'oraisa. Zois chukas ha Torah. So they're both called chukim. So when David HaMelech says he wants his heart to be wholesome in the chukim he refers to is the Korban Pesach and the Parah Adumah. This past Shabbos, I had the great honor and pleasure of eating the Shabbos Suda with Hagoin Rav Weiss, one of the great poskim today. He's a posik for Shari Tzedek Hospital. He's the head of the Machayin Minchas Asher, Mechabris Sfarim Minchas Asher, and he told over, first of all, a remarkable story about all cans before, please. He told over a remarkable story about his father who had passed away like 3 months before, and he said he has many brothers. Many of them are mamish go'inei olam. Rav Weiss. He has a brother who's, I think, chief rabbi of Montreal, and he said over that his father was zoicha to this because after the war, his father risked his health and went around in an army jeep burying the bodies that were infested with typhus, and he risked his health, his life, to bury the bodies of the Kedoshim, and he was zoicha to tremendous Talmidei Chachamim come from him, and this was especially meaningful to me because I know my grandfather also was very involved in Kvuras, bringing to Kvuras Yisrael these Kedoshim. But anyway, at the table, he said over an amazing Dvar Torah that he said is printed in his Haggadah. I went to 4 stores on Thursday, could not find the Haggadah, but I was able to find somebody who had it, and it's on your sheet, and maybe we could add our own very beautiful Chiddush. Okay, so Rav Weiss, and this he said over at the Shabbos table even, he asked that it's rather strange that David HaMelech is putting under one umbrella the chayk of the Parah Adumah and the chayk of the Korban Pesach, considering the fact that these two mitzvahs are the two most polar opposite mitzvahs in the Torah. Chayk of the Pesach and the chayk of the Parah Adumah. Well, we know when it comes to Parah Adumah, it's the quintessential chayk. It has no rhyme or reason. Not only are you not allowed to ask a question, you're not even allowed to think a question about the Parah Adumah. Rashi says in number 6 on the Rashi meaning of Parshas Chukas, why is Parah Adumah called a chayk? Lefisha hasatan v'umayis ha'olam moinin es Yisrael loymar ma mitzvah zois. The goyim, the umayis ask, why this mitzvah? Umatam yeshma lefikach kazav al chuka gezei rahim lefanai ein lecha reshus leharer achra. Not only can you ask, you can't even think. When it comes to Pesach, right? The famous Reb Chaim wants to know there's a mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim the whole year. What's special about Leil Seder? And one of the answers is Leil Seder, it's not enough to remember. You need to ask. I mean, Chazal were masaking that a Jew needs to say, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. You need to ask. Everybody go around the table. Ask. Everybody ask the question. Even the tum, even the simpleton, even he gets out the words, ma'azois. So when it comes to Parah Adumah, Tamimos, Ein Rishus Lahara, you can't even think of kasha. And by the tum, everybody around the table, manishtana. The whole mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is asking. Even the She'ena Yidei Elisha, what about you have a kid who doesn't ask? You feed him a question. So how in the world is Dor HaMelech grouping together these two mitzvahs, the Chayka, the Parah Adumah, and the Chayka, the Pesach? Parah Adumah, I'm exaggerating in the way it's asked, but it's kedai to exaggerate it. That by I don't mean exaggerate, I'm just emphasizing the polar opposite nature of them. By Parah Adumah, Rashi says, Ein l'cha reshus lahar achreh, and by Haggadah Shel Pesach, you feed the question. Let's look at number 5 from the Haggadah Minchas Asher Yesh Lahavin Rav Asher Weiss. Hatzad Hashava Sheben Chukos Seila. What's the common denominator? Pesach uParah. Shedavid Bikesh Davka Aleim Tamimus Uvamahim Doimim Zalazeh. Another question. Darash Reb Simoi. Reb Simoi Darshan B'Shash Hikdimu Yisrael Nasa L'Nishma. When Klal Yisrael were makdim nasa v'nishma. In other words, first they said nasa, and then they said nishma. Bo shishim riboy shamalachi asharis. Came 60 myriads of angels. L'chal echad v'yachem Yisrael. Kashru lo shnei ksarim. Echad keneged nasa, v'yechad keneged nishma. They got 2 crowns, one for nasa, one for nishma. Question. Says Rav Asher Weiss, the Gemara doesn't say they got one for Nasa and one for Nishma. You know why they got the crowns? Because they were makdim Nasa to Nishma, right? It's not the pshat, Nasa is a good thing and Nishma is a good thing. It's because of the Kadima, B'shah shehikdimu. Well, you don't have to be a mathematician to know that if you're getting a crown for every good thing you do, how many good things did the Jews do by being makdim Nasa and Nishma? 1! They were makdim! So, 1 plus 0, you could try it on the calculator. If you don't have a calculator, they have phones people have. I'll let you take out your phone now, by the way. Everybody could turn on the phone. You could turn on the phone, and you could put on the calculator as long as you turn it off afterwards. And 1 plus 0 equals 1. So then, why did they get 2 crowns? Another kasha, this is in the Hakdama of the Haggadah Shel Pesach, Minchas Asher. Number 3, an amazing kasha, but it's a kasha we've already asked. Maybe at least 2 years ago. On a Rashi. Rashi says, at the end of the Akedah, Hashem comes to Avram, he says, Al tishlach yodcha el anar ve'al tasloi mu'uma. Ki ata yadati, ki yirei lekim ata, v'lo chasachta, es bincha, es yichidcha. Amen. Says Rashi, Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar le Avraham. Avraham said to God, I don't get you. Efarish lefanecha zichas. Let me explain myself. Yesterday you told me your future lays in Yitzchak. Then you were chayzer v'chazarta v'amarta kachna azbincha. Then you tell me go shecht your kid. So I'm already confused. And now you're telling me don't shecht him. First you tell me your future is in Yitzchak. Then you tell me to shecht Yitzchak. Now you tell me not to shecht Yitzchak. Ribono shel olam. I never will desecrate my covenant. I will never change my word. When you told me take it, I never changed my words. I never told you to shecht him. You bring him up. You brought him up. You bring him down. Frekt Rabbi Asher Weiss. But we're going to see this question preceded contemporary poskim. If Avram had a problem with what God was telling him, then when Hashem said, "Kachna es binchas yichidcha v'haleu sham la'oila," Avram Avinu said, have a kasha. Didn't you tell me yesterday that I'm going to be my kid down to the chuppah and my grandkid down to the chuppah? What are you telling me to shech him? If Avram Avinu had a kasha, he should have asked the kasha when Hashem told him to shech the Yitzchak. Why is he waiting till when Hashem tells him not to shech the Yitzchak to ask the kasha? I mean, if you have a son, then the question should be when Rebbe Hashem wants you to harm the son. Now when Hashem says, no, leave it alone now, he's asking the kasha. He should have asked, be'esara, not when the esara is over. So it happens to be, Rav Asher Weiss asks this kasha, number 11. Why didn't he ask immediately? I found this kasha in the Taz. The Taz on Rashi asks, Kasha lama lo hiksha klum kishamar like kachna as mincha. And previously, also this kasha is the kasha of Reb Chaim Brisker, the Grach, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. It happens to be at the table, we were sitting around the table, so I took the luxury of asking him the following question. What is the job of a Rav today? What's a Rav? What are you supposed to do?
Keep out of trouble.
No harm.
No question of triggers, the question of truth.
What's the job of the Rav? What's the primary job of the Rav? Yeah, keep it on the tape. Keep it on. I'm just joking. Yeah? So he said like this. This is an age-old question, and they posed this question to three Gedolim. To Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, that's why I mentioned it, Reb Chaim, and to Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, and to Rav Itzula Panovitcher, the Zera Yitzchak. And they all gave three different answers. Rav Yitzchak Elchanan, the great Pesach Adar, said that the job of a Rav is to paskin shailas. Kasher, treif, mutter, asur, tahar, tameh. Rav Itzul Panovitcher said, no, not the paskin shailas. You need someone to paskin shailas, you go to the Avezdin, the Ma'ir Hara, you don't need a Rav to paskin. The job of the Rav is to teach Torah, Lamdus, Shasim Poiskim, Musar, Halacha, it's a Marbitz Torah. And of course, Rav Itzul Panovitcher, he was a big Lamdan. He wrote the Zera Yitzchak. So Reb Chaim Brisker said, no. Job of Rav is not to be a Poisek, not to be... The job of the Rav is to be Avihem Shal HaKal, the father of the Kal. And Reb Chaim was known for his legendary chesed. When the town of Brisk burnt down, Reb Chaim did not sleep in his bed. Reb Chaim's house was open. You'd had Aniyim sleeping in Reb Chaim's bed, Reb Chaim would sleep elsewhere. So Rav Asher Weiss said, and who are we to stick our heads into this machlekes of all-time greats? So he said, Mizel Tanach Yadecha. You got to do all of them. Okay. But anyway, I just mentioned to you. I mentioned Reb Chaim, I mentioned Rav Asher Weiss. So, okay. The Taz answers the kasha like this. At first, Avram Avinu didn't want to ask any questions. You know why? Because then it would look like it was very difficult for him. It was too hard in his eyes to shecht his son. But now that Hashem's saying, Adarabah, you don't have to shecht him. So now Avram Avinu is saying, now I could have a legitimate question. In other words, without looking like, I just don't want to be Mekayim, the Tzivoy of Hashem. Reb Chaim says a more of a lumdish way of answering this question, and we'll see how Rav Asher Weiss says it over. Reb Chaim says like this.
Didn't Avram know that Hashem was giving him misyonos along his way?
Fine, but he still had a kasha. Hashem told him the other day, Ki b'Yitzchak yikar l'chazara. Now Hashem's saying...
Avraham Avinu was open to do whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do.
Correct, but doesn't mean...
HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what to do.
But he has a kasha.
Tell me now to do this, tell me now to do this.
Fine, but how does Avraham reconcile the fact that yesterday Hashem said, Ki b'Yitzchak yikar l'chazara? So why is he asking now? Whatever you want me to do. Why is it?
Whatever you want.
Fine, so why is he asking kasha? He's asking a kasha. He's saying, I don't get you. You tell me, then you tell me about Leila Oila, and now you tell me, Al Tishach Yod Chalanar. So he's asking kasha. So he's asking kashas. Ask at the right time. B'shoel Ke'inyan. So Reb Chaim says like this: when Hashem told him Kachnas Bencha, he was Torah b'mitzvah. He had no time to ask Shilas. But now Hashem said, don't do anything. So now Avram Avinu has a vacation day. So now he has, what do you do on a day off? You sit and learn. So Avram Avinu is asking Hashem, what's up with you?
No, I mean, right away after he told him not to do it.
He didn't have to, right? Because that was his own volition to bring the korban. And he asked Hashem to accept it in lieu of Yitzchak. Listen to what Reb Chaim says. He says this is more correct. He says like this. There was once a chassid. The best stories are stories with Hasidim and Misnagdim, right? There was once a chassid, and he asked Reb Chaim, you Misnagdim, the whole day you're busy with kashas. This kasha, that kasha, what's pshat, what's this, what's that. Who are you asking kashas on? Ribbanu Shalom. We in kashas. We Hasidim, we don't ask kashas. We daven, we learn, no kashas. You Misnagdim, you're busy asking kashas. Hello? Who are your kashas on? God? You're asking kashas on God? But the Torah says this is the way it is. So what are you asking kashas? Says Reb Chaim Brisker, really the chassid was right. But you need to know when you're allowed to ask a kasha and when you're not allowed to ask a kasha. And what are the guidelines? For the guidelines, you have to look at the Brayis of Rabbi Shema. In the Brayis of Rabbi Shema, we say Shnei Ksuvim Hamachishim Zeh Zeh. Ad Sheyavo Yaakosov Ashlishi V'Yachriya B'Neiam. That means like this. Until you find the Kasav HaShlishi, you're not allowed to ask a kasha on Shnei Ksuvim Ha'achishim Zeh. Torah says this way, that way. Gezerah hi melefanai ve'ein lecha reshus lahar acharei. You can't ask a kasha. We don't understand. So long as you have Shnei Ksuvim Ha'achishim Zeh, all questions are off. You can't ask until you have the answer of the Kasav HaShlishi Shebachriya B'Neiam. Once you have the third pasuk, now the Torah is saying, I'm giving you an answer. Oh, you're giving an answer. Let's try to ask the question and figure out how the answer answers the question. The only reason, says Reb Chaim, that we're allowed to ask questions on Torah is because the Torah was given that you should be mefalpel and ask and try to understand. And then the question becomes a chelik of the Torah. Now the question is not a challenge to God. Now when you try to understand Tosfos' kasha on the Gemara, that's Torah, that's what Hashem wants. If a question is legitimate, the question is Torah. If the question is not legitimate, the question is apikarsas. Therefore, when Hashem came to Avram Avinu and he said, Ki b'Yitzchak yikar l'chazara, givaldik. And then the next day when Hashem says, V'haleu sham la'oila, Avram Avinu says, well, what can I tell you? Shnei Ksuvim Ha'achishim Zeh Zeh. Not to ask anything. Can't ask. But I don't understand it. Because you don't understand something, you're allowed to ask a question. But now Hashem comes with the third pasuk, and the third pasuk is, you brought him up, now bring him down. Avinu says, oh, now there's a teretz to the Shnei Ksuvim Ha'achishim Zeh Zeh. Now I'll ask the kasha, what's pshat in pasuk A, what's pshat in pasuk B, and let me understand how the third pasuk answers the question. That's how Reb Chaim explained why Avram Avinu originally did not ask the question, because then it was begeder Shnei Ksuvim Ha'achishim Zeh Zeh, and why now he asked the question. Comes Rav Asher Weiss, and I believe he's saying something pretty similar to the Taz and pretty similar to Reb Chaim. And back to the original question, Rabbi Sai, why is David HaMelech comparing the chukah of Parah Adumah ein lecha reshus laharer achareh and Korban Pesach, not only ein lecha reshus, you're mechuyev. If you don't ask, you're not mekayim the mitzvah sasei da'iraisa of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's the whole mitzvah. Man ishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylos. And you don't know, psachla, you feed him the question. Says Rav Asher Weiss, the reason why David HaMelech groups these two chukim together is not because of their similarity, it's because gufa, they are polar opposites. Chukas HaPesach, we're commanded to ask, to darshan. V'chol hamarbe lishol hareza meshubach. Well, if somebody asks a kasha, we'll reward them. We'll give them bazooka gum. Put it on. Tell them to. It's already advertised. Right? Which you could trade them in for money, right? It's a well-known minhag, right? Afilu, even the tam, right? David HaMelech says the tam should ask a question. Even the tam says mazois. Even any delishol at Pesach loy. Ha chukas apara. Shlomo Melech says, Amarti echkama v'hirachayka mimeni. Shlomo Melech says, I have no clue. By Parah Adumah, we say no. Chukim chakakti gezeros gazarti ein lecha rishus lahar achreim. In life, there are times you can't ask questions, like Parah Adumah, and there are times you're obligated to ask questions, like Pesach. So what do? David HaMelech says, Libi samim b'chukecha. Give my heart the tmimos and the perfection and the wholesomeness to know when to ask and when not to ask. Reference to Korban Pesach and the Parah Adumah. In other words, what David HaMelech wants to know is you need tmimos to know sometimes the question is wrong and sometimes the question is a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa. And they're grouped, they're both chukim. And what's the rule? Says Rav Weiss, what's the rule? When are we supposed to ask? When are we not supposed to ask? This sounds like a very difficult achievement, a very difficult madrega. You're telling me sometimes you're not even allowed to think of the question, sometimes you're obligated to ask. Well, he says, let's follow in the footsteps of Avram Avinu. Where Avram Avinu, in the beginning, he didn't ask. And at the end, he asked. Why? Says Rav Weiss as follows. Look in this paragraph, and I think this is what Reb Chaim is saying. Mikan lo madnu. You see number 14, left-hand side, second paragraph. Dekol zman shahaya mitzuva va'oimed. When you have a mitzvah in front of you, not the time for papulim and shiurim. You have a mitzvah to do. Asay. Don't ask any kashas. Achla achar. But when the mitzvah is over and you're not mitzvah lasois, now you could be choyker, v'doyresh, what's pshad. Very important in life. If the question you have is to try to observe better, it's a good kasha. If the question is, I'm not understanding, I don't get this stuff, maybe it's not for me, that's the wrong time to ask. When you have a mitzvah in front of you, you just do it, no questions asked. When the mitzvah is not in front of you, you're entitled to ask. That's the klal.
So after you take the Parah Adumah, you're allowed to ask about it?
When the question brings to greater observance, you ask. When the question brings to lax, you don't ask.
You have to ask a Rav.
Yeah, we'll see. The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos on that Pechas that when Klal Yisrael were makdim nasa to nishma, they got how many crowns? 2 crowns. One for nasa and one for nishma. And we asked.
One.
They are only rewarded for being makdim. The mahakdama was only one good deed. Says Rav Weiss, you ready? Go in us. What does nishma mean? Nishma is understand. We'll do, and then we'll understand. There's a major difference between trying to understand before you do something and trying to understand after you do something. When you ask a kasha before you do it, what kind of kasha is it? What is this? In other words,
I'm not sure
should I do it or should I not do it?
Right.
You're asking a kasha of incredulity. You're incredulous. When you're asking after you do it, it's I want to understand the mitzvah. So when Klal Yisrael were makdim the nasa to the nishma, 2 things happened. First of all, they're willing to do it right away. And number 2, they transform their nishma. They transform their nishma from, what is this? To, let me understand what this is. Whenever you ask ma, you can ask ma? You can ask ma. Right? So in other words, the nishma was transformed. He says like this, Venira, the kasha magdimim nasa lenishma, tarti isve. There are 2 parts. Nasa shalafnei nishma, you're doing first. That's the chukos hapara. The chukos hapara is asiya leloi shaila v'hachana. Immediate action without any understanding. And then the nishma after the nasa is the chukos hapesach. It's the ratzain, lilmoid, l'shmaya, ulahaven. Therefore they got 2 crowns. One for the chukas hapesach. What the chukas hapesach is the desire to understand, and one for the chukas hapara, the nasa lefnei nishma.
Rabbi, if you follow this principle, shouldn't we do the manishtana after we do all of the mitzvahs? We should do all the mitzvahs related to the Seder first, and then we should talk about why we did it and understand it. The mitzvah's in front of us. Why are we asking questions?
I hear. So maybe I want to address that. Rabbi say, there's another piece that I saw in the Haggadah Shel Pesach Minchas Asher, also similar to this idea, that fits in very well. You know, the Gemara says in Megillah, "V'loy karav zeh el zeh kol halayla." From here, Chazal Darshan, "Bikshu malachi asher loymar shira." The Malachim wanted to say shira. By the way, I believe the Marsha says, how do you see from here they wanted to say shira? Because we say by kedusha, "V'kara zeh el zeh." Here it says, "V'loy karav zeh el zeh." They wanted to say a shira. Hashem said, "No, masayad tovim v'yam v'atem oimrim shira." Everybody and their first cousin asks, Klal Yisrael sang Shira. They sang Az Yashir. Why didn't Hashem tell Klal Yisrael, Atem oimrim Shira, Masiyadai Tavim B'yam? The Malachim ask, Hashem says, no, so how did Klal Yisrael do it? So Rav Weiss says, I never heard this answer. It says, Bikshu Malachi Hasharei Shlomo Shira. They asked. You're asking? You can't do it. Klal Yisrael never asked. They spontaneously sang Shira. If you say Shira as a spontaneous expression of your joy, so we're not going to hold you accountable. Yes, the mitzvahs are dying, but you couldn't contain yourself. You're just bursting forth with Shiras v'Tishbach. But now you're asking the Malachim come to Hashem with an intellectual shaila. Is it the right thing for us? So Hashem says, you obviously don't feel the Shira so much that you just burst forth with Shira. You don't feel it now, you're asking? The answer is no, you can't sing Shira.
It's like Pinchas, we do too.
It's like Kano and Poigim, right? It's like Habal Aramis, Kano and Poigim. It's also an interesting aspect of asking. You know, asking is different. Asking is a different type of thing.
Well, Bnei Yisrael were saved. They had what to sing about. The Malachim were never in danger.
The Gemara doesn't say that though. The Gemara says, Masayadai Tavmiyah. Okay. So I'll tell you a story. It's a story that's well known, but here it's actually documented where it occurred, where it happened. The Rav Weiss writes that he heard from the Ger Rebbe, the Leiv Simcha, who heard from his father, the Imrei Emes, something that happened in the court of the Sfas Emes. This is a famous story, but we're going to say it exactly the way it's reported over here. And that is, when you say in Hallel, Ana Hashem, you could accomplish with that tefillah more than any other tefillah in the whole davening. It's a well-known thing the Sfas Emes says. When you say in Hallel, Ana Hashem, you could accomplish, the words are, Efshar lifal es advarim haniskavim b'yoser. So the next day after Hallel, a big machloikis broke out in the Ger Beis Medrash between the Ziknei Chasidim. Halalu Oimrim. It's when you say Ana Hashem Haishiana. The Halalu Oimrim, no, it's when you scream out Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. And some of the Chasidim screamed out Ana Hashem Haishiana, and the other ones they screamed Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Said the Imrei Emes, they're both wrong. That's not what the Sfas Emes meant. It's not when you say Ana Hashem Haishiana. It's not when you say Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. It's when you say Ana Hashem Ki Ani Avdecha. Famous story. What's the meaning of this? Why is the most opportune time in davening, al pi Chasidus, when you say the words Ana Hashem Ki Ani Avdecha? Says Rav Weiss, let me explain this Chasidish Shemaisa. It says like this. We say in the Shabbos morning davening, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chalkoi ki eved ne'aman karas aloi kalil tiferes b'roishai nasata v'amdoi l'fanech al har Sinai. We say in davening, Moshe Rabbeinu got a crown. Why do you get a crown? I want to get a crown. Actually, do I want to get a crown? What does a crown do for me? It would be hard to give shir wearing a crown. That would attract a lot of attention. Maybe we'll get more hits, but what's the Indian that Moshe Rabbeinu got a crown? It says, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkoi ki eved nemon karasoloi kalil teferas, he got a crown. When a person is an eved, who are they an eved to? A melech. There's an eved and a melech. In other words, the more you make yourself an eved and you're mamlech Hashem, what does a crown represent? Malchus. Hashem says, you make me a melech, I make you a melech. Mida keneged mida. You make me a melech, I make you a melech. You want to accomplish in this world? You want to have shlita, power? You want your words to carry weight? You want your brachos to have meaning? You make me a melech. You're Yismach Moshe b'manas chelkoi. Ki eved nemon karasaloi. When Moshe Rabbeinu was the quintessential eved Hashem, right? What does the pasuk say? Moshe Avdi. So Hashem says, you made me a melech, I make you a melech. Mida keneged mida. Now Rabbi say Moshe Rabbeinu did it. The davening is saying besimcha. Because the highest madrega of doing something is what? Besimcha, everybody knows. So Moshe Rabbeinu made himself an eved, besimcha. Hashem raised him up to the heavens. And he made him a melech in the greatest way. Well, Hallel on Yom Tif, that's the pinnacle of Simchas Yom Tif. And the highest possible way for God to raise a person up is what? Make him a melech. Hashem can make him a melech. So when you say in Hallel the words, Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha b'simcha, the Rebbeinu Shalom raises you up to Shamayim, he makes you a melech. That's why the most opportune time in the Hallel is Ana Hashem ki ani avdecha. When you declare b'simcha, Hashem, you are my melech and I'm your eved, says the Sfas Emes, you could be payal dvarim niskaven b'yoser. The Mela, says Rav Weiss, now we understand the two crowns that Klal Yisrael got on Har Sinai. And this fits, he doesn't make the connection, but it fits beautifully into his understanding of the two crowns of Nasa and Nishma. The crown of Nasa is the crown of Chukas HaParah. The crown of Nishma is Chukas HaPesach. Says Rav Weiss, in what way do we declare that we're Avdei Hashem and Hashem's our Melech? When we're able to surrender our seichel and say, you know what, no kashas. So when Klal Yisrael said Nasa v'nishma, what were they saying? We are your avodim. Hashem said, oh, I'm your melech. Two crowns. You're a melech also. The concept of crowns, that's why we say Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkoi ki eved nemon karasoloi kilil tiferes b'rosh hasantoi. When Moshe Rabbeinu was sameach b'chelkoi, when he's called an Eved Nemon, Memelo, it makes sense that he should get a crown, and that's why Klal Yisrael got crowns on Har Sinai as well. So let's just add two small ideas. No, don't go anywhere. Nothing will happen. It's good to know this. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, we want to say like this. Every year, the Hakdama to the Yom Tov of Pesach is Parshas Parah. Why is Parshas Parah Hakdama to the Yom Tov of Pesach? Yom Tov of Pesach, it's all about kashas. That's the whole mitzvah salayla. Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim be right. V'chi yishalcha bincha. Everybody has to ask the manishtana. You don't have a kasha, I will feed you the kasha. But you have to have a Hakdama. The Hakdama to be able to ask questions is that you can't ask questions. Yeah, you know when you can ask? When you're able to reach a madrega that ultimately Parah Adumah, you have a Parshas Parah, Parshas Parah, now we're ready for Parshas HaChodesh. Now that's the preparation for the Yom Tov of Pesach. All the questions have to be based on the principle that ultimately Gezer Him Lefanai ve'en lecha reshus lahara acharah. Once you have that Yesod, like Avram Avinu in the beginning, there are no kashas. Avram Avinu didn't ask anything. When you have terutzim, right? Somebody once came over. There was once an apikoros. He came to the brisker. He came to Reb Chaim. So Reb Chaim have kashas. Reb Chaim said, no, you don't have kashas. You have terutzim for all of your behavior. You have answers and justifications and rationalizations. In other words, you have to know what a kasha is. Is it a kasha or is it a teretz? So you know when it's a kasha? It's only a legitimate kasha. Zois chukas haTorah. We read about the Parah Adumah. We understand that we have the ability to surrender our seichel and surrender our minds. Yehi libi samid b'chukecha. Now we're ready for Manishtana Halayla Hazeh Mikal Halaylos. Interestingly, I just also thought, they just started Mishnah Yomis on Wednesday. They started 2 Mishnayos a day. So the first Mishnah on Shas, Mei Masai Kar Neshama Be'arvis, Nu, Mishal Shakam Nechazal Josem, Ad, Soif, Hashmura, Harishayna, Divrei, Rebbe Eliezer. Who's the first Tana mentioned in Shas? Rebbe Eliezer. Frekta Naidi Behuda. What's the Groisa Yichos that Rabbi Lezer is the first Tana mentioned in Shas?
First one we come to shul.
So some want to say, and the Gemara says in Pesachim, Rabbi Lezer said of himself, like Dami Adam, Lebeis Hamedrash Miyamai, he's always the first one in shul. So Mida Keneged Mida, he's rewarded, he gets to be the first one in Shas. Naidi Behuda says like this. There's a Medrash, Parshas Parah, that says when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shamayim, he saw somebody was darshaning Rabbi Eliezer. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, Yiratzon Sheyiyah Yotzei Chalotz, I want him to come from me. Hashem said, you got it. Rabbi Eliezer was a descendant. V'shem ha'echad, Eliezer. Eliezer came from Moshe Rabbeinu. By the way, the Medrash says, what was he learning? Parah Adumah. Why was it so important to Moshe Rabbeinu that he should be mispalel? That this individual, Rabbi Akiva, he was dorish the tagim. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't mispalel that Rabbi Akiva should come. Why that Rabbi Eliezer? Because Moshe Rabbeinu is the Moiser HaTorah, and the Hakdama to Torah is Gezei Rahim Lefanai Ve'in Rishus Lahara Achareha. Rabbi Moshe says, I want this man. I want him to come from me. This is the type of Hakdama you have to have to Torah. And maybe that's why Rabbi Eliezer is the Taka. The Noda B'Yehuda says that's why he's the first Tana in Shas. Why? So the Noda B'Yehuda says to give kavod to Moshe Rabbeinu. But maybe we could say, because since the whole reason Moshe Rabbeinu wanted Rabbi Eliezer to be from Ziyosach HaLotzai is because of the concept of Parah Adumah, of Tamimos, Mamela, we start Shas, we start Mishnayos with the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, who understood this idea of Parah Adumah, Gezei Rahim Lefanai, Ve'ein L'Chorashos, Laharar Achareha. Rabbi Weiss, have a wonderful Shabbos. Take care.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.